Welcome to the Dealmakers Coffee Break. I'm Swaths. Let's go. Welcome to another episode of the Dealmakers Coffee Break edition. Today I have with me Noah Pape. Did I say it right? Noah Pape?
That is correct.
There you go. So Noah Pape, he's the principal at Peregrine Land Investments. And let me tell you something. This guy is so interesting. When I asked him, what is the topic you want to talk about in the podcast, he says use of technology and machine learning in real estate investment. And obviously the Texas mega region, which we're going to get to later, they have a very special approach when it comes to real estate investments. And I'm not going to go any further. So Noah, please take it away. Tell us about yourself, about Peregrine, and we can continue the conversation from there.
Sure. So I'll give the quick background on myself. My attraction really to the investment world, and really the use of data and technology in the investment world starts with kind of my interest in sports analytics back when I was a kid. So I was the kind of kid who, instead of watching, people ask me to this day about, did you see this Disney movie or that Disney movie? I was busy, I can't tell you, a random Disney movie, but I can tell you the random score or the score of a random game back in, 2008. The reason I was really attracted to sports analytics is because it was a way to really use data to construct a roster or squad, under constraints, and to do it in a differentiated way that would allow you to really gain an edge using data. So when it came time to actually make decisions in my professional life, it became clear to me that the field of sports analytics was still today is in its early days, and there was a lot more professional opportunity in the business world. So when I started looking at investing, I could see the same parallels. It was, let's use data, alternative data, under constraints. You've got, say, constraints on what you can invest in. You've got constraints on how much capital you can deploy, et cetera, to construct a roster or portfolio, in the case of the investment world, of assets where you've got a differentiated view. So that's what really drove me to the investment world. And then inside that, I spent a little bit of time working at a quant hedge fund, a little bit of time working in private equity. I thought that the best place to do it was somewhere where, you really, really got an edge using the data. And that's what drove me to Land. Is taking some of those, I guess, techniques seen in quantitative finance and applying them in the private markets, and in particular with Land, a private market that's very opaque, very fragmented, and has a lot more important data points than a lot of other, pieces of finance or areas of finance.
Mm-hmm. That's actually interesting. I've never heard of this I've heard of approaches of tech-enabled land investments when people are using things like CoStar or Sherry or whatever data platforms that they have for real estate. But I've never heard of this kind of approach of doing it yourself. I'd love to hear more about that. Like, how do you actually do that?
Definitely. So I think, Galileo is a perfect example of where technology has actually been brought in to make increase operational efficiency. And I think that's kind of the first frontier of the use of technology in real estate and in the investment world is, let's go ahead and make our operations more efficient. If we spend less time on that, we can spend more time looking at deals. We can see more deals, and therefore we're going to get to the best deals. We're going to be able to see more of the best deals. I think the second frontier beyond that is, let's aggregate with stuff like what CoStar is doing, other platforms, where you're taking all the important data points on the investment side, aggregating them into a single place, and it's kind of, in a way, increasing the operational efficiency of the investment side of your real estate organization.
Mm-hmm. Like decision-making, strategy, deciding on the piece of land you want to go into, researching the market. Is that correct?
Exactly. So that's where, that was kind of where we started with building our platform was, instead of having to go to, especially with land, where it's a very visual process, you're constantly looking at different data points on a map. Instead of having to go find the property on whatever listing website, go to 12 different mapping applications to, get this data here and this data here, and it takes forever. It's hard to make apples to apples comparisons. We put that all into one place. That was the second frontier, is really just data aggregation, data compilation. The third, where I spend most of my time, is now that we've got all this data, how can we use machine learning to help us not only be more efficient, but really and truly make better decisions. That's where I think a lot of the value comes in, because if you think about our goal as an investment organization is to get to do the best deals in the entire space of Texas land. So being more efficient, both operationally, allows us to see more deals. Being more efficient with our investment organization and that side of the firm allows us to, be able to review more deals. But at the end of the day, we need technology, we need data, we need additional pieces of analysis that we can generate that allow us to actually identify what is a good deal. So that's how we think of it. Like, we want to be able to see as many deals as we can, but then within that, we want to be able to build technology, build resources that allow us to discern, what is the best deal on the market versus the 10th versus the 1,000th.
Mm-hmm. And this is taking into consideration, I assume, many data points that you are able to bring into the system, correct?
Exactly. And I think that's an interesting part of land versus other real estate asset classes is when you're looking at, if you're buying a nearly stabilized apartment or office, you're looking at, okay, how much is this going to cash flow? What are the cap rates, et cetera? And it's kind of a very clear process for how to evaluate an investment. With land, an undeveloped land, if it's not something that's immediately developable, making that same kind of analysis is hard. Really understanding, how should I value this piece of land? On one hand, you can, use the comps and do a relative valuation like that. Or you can say, I know that a developer will be able to build on this in 3 years, buy this in 3 years. Mm-hmm. So, understanding that they need to get whatever percent IRR, they're going to be able to pay this much for it in 3 years. But both of those are pretty opaque and not as truthful valuation, not as, grounded valuation processes. And that's where machine learning is so powerful, is that, when you're building a machine learning model, it's kind of like building a theoryless model. It doesn't need to understand, there's a clear theory for valuing real estate, but it doesn't necessarily apply as well to land. And so that's why machine learning is so valuable in land specifically.
Explain to me a little bit about your strategy. I mean, it feels like you've found your asset class, right? But you said, like, this is not enough for me, because it's no longer this, I would say, older or more traditional market where people say, let me smell, like, is it a good deal? I'm going to take it, right? It's something different. Like, your approach is very special in that way, and your asset class is extremely special when we look at other GPs we've been talking to. So can you dive a little bit into your strategy specifically when you talk about investments and what deals you go into and why you go into them, putting aside data and AI that tells you there's a good potential there?
Absolutely. And I think it's important, before I jump into this, to say it is still a very human-driven process. At the end of the day, the technology exists to make us better, make us more efficient. But, we're never going to, maybe one day we'll get to the point where, it's like a quant hedge fund where it's spitting out buy and sell signals on pieces of land, but we're not going to get there. And part of that is just because the data is so disparate, and a lot of very important pieces of data you can't really capture until you pick up the phone and call the broker. Mm-hmm. We have that happen all the time, where our system will spit out and say, hey, you got to go look at this piece of property. It's clearly underpriced. It's in the path of growth, and it's got great features for development. But then I'll pick up the phone, call the broker. There's a conservation easement. Mm-hmm. No wonder it's a third of the price that it would be otherwise. So we run into stuff like that all the time. Mm-hmm. But what I'd say about really what we're doing is we're trying to play in a space where the land is transitioning from really agricultural and recreational uses to something that is attractive to a developer or home builder. With residential uses are the largest consumer of land on an acreage basis. And generally, they'll be one of the first users when it comes to going to a new fringe market. So we're trying to spaces that market is transitioning and becoming something that's catching the eye of a developer. The thing that we do differently is we don't actually do any development ourselves. We'll maintain or maybe do some light entitlement work, but we don't do. we're not doing any sort of development. We'll do some paper improvements. So what we'll do instead is, we'll buy the land, and then we'll work with developers and relationships that, me being much younger, that come from my partners who are twice my age, is a very interesting organizational dynamic. So they've got these great relationships with home builders and developers. We'll buy the piece of land. We'll go to the home builders and developers, get it under contract with them, give them the time and allow them to come in and do the work to, get the piece of land shovel ready or start building on it. So that's how, because they oftentimes, especially in markets like today, home builders are being punished for having large land positions.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of developers don't have the long-term capital to go out and tie up some of these land positions. So where that long-term capital, and we think we're helping solve a problem. There's massive housing shortages, as sure your guests have talked about across the broader United States, but especially in Texas. And it doesn't look like it's going to get any better anytime soon. So we're solving that problem by, allowing these home builders, developers that don't have access to long-term capital, the ability to go out, put a piece of land under contract, start doing the work on it without actually, basically being able to do some, off-balance sheet entitlement work. Since they don't have access to the capital, we do. And that's how we kind of fit into this broader residential and home building space.
And you still say the owners of the land, I assume, right?
Exactly. And we're very flexible. The structure will change deal to deal. But in general, we're the ones who are, and sometimes one thing we'll do is, since we're buying the raw land and we've got very flexible, very patient capital, we can buy deals where maybe if you bought the whole deal, it wouldn't fit entirely into an industrial or multifamily user. It doesn't fit perfectly into a single family user, but we can buy it, work with a single family user on one side, work with, the commercial builder on the other side. And that allows us to, drive some value creation and take advantage of our flexible patient capital that a lot of other people in the space don't have.
So I'm looking at this is great. Like I've never heard anything that special, and the way that you differentiate yourself is very special. I'm looking at and this is to the other topic, right? We're talking about the mega region called Texas, and I'm looking at your website. There's this map, and we all know the we're looking at Texas as a whole, and we see Austin, Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, and San Antonio, which are what we call the primary markets of Texas, right? So they would be like the centric parts of Texas. And then when we go from primary to secondary and tertiary markets, this is where a lot of the medium-sized partners or firms focus on buying those pieces of land that are already somehow developed, and they just need to upgrade them. From what I understand, you're not looking at the secondary and tertiary. You're actually looking into beyond that. You're looking into where the land would expand in the, let's say, near future, or maybe a little bit longer future. Does that make sense?
That is a great way to describe it. And I think to give an example of how we really thought about it, because Texas is such a massive state, and we can't go out and buy something in super rural West Texas and then buy something in downtown Austin. And, all LPs would be very confused as to what they're buying into. The profiles of those two investments are very different. So we challenged ourselves to, let's actually, since we are such a technology data-driven organization, let's use data to define our investment region. So what we really did there is we looked at the population change in the last 10 years in Texas, and looked at the amount of land that was actually developed to support that population change. And then we took the population projections over the next 10 years, applied that ratio of essentially how much land needs to be developed per new person, figured out the scale of land that needed to be developed, which is, comes out to, unsurprisingly, really, something around, a third of an acre per new person that's coming. Then applied that, basically, we took the profile or the profile of the existing cities, applied that additional acreage, and that's how we defined our investment area.
Wow. This is so special. Okay, we don't have a long episode. These are the shorter episodes, but I can already tell you If you're interested, we're going to really like to do a research piece with you, a written one, with our content team. I think there could be something really interesting to talk about here. A super interesting topic. You're going to be the author. I think it could be great. It really puts you out there. I think this is so special. And again, we're two tech guys. We're both data oriented. So it really helps having this type of conversations, for me at least. And I also see that it's so deep, the way that you built your strategies. Like even when you talk about, for example, Austin, right? You talk about high-tech centers that are outside of California. And when you talk about San Antonio, you realize that it talks about military service, health research centers, right, as a link between US and Mexico. And in Houston, you go into the world capital of energy and you talk about more energy and trading. And in Dallas-Fort Worth, you're talking about like the center of finance and shipping, transportation, real estate. It's like you identified asset classes within the asset class and took a more of a broader perspective of how can we make money long-term. It's really special. I love it. It's genius the way I see it.
And that's one of the things we love about Texas and especially the Texas Triangle, is the four economies are so diversified and they're different from one each other. Drivers that are driving each of those local economies. And so that means that, when you're investing in real estate through a fund structure, you're getting exposure to 12, 15, 20 different assets. There is real value in that diversification across the Texas Triangle. In addition, it means that the Texas Triangle is one of the few regions of the country that can truly support full scope of relocation activities that, have been a big theme in the post-COVID world. And so
especially in Dallas. I've been to Dallas at IMN. I talked about this in a different episode, but if you know IMN, I've been there. I remember I was sleeping maybe 15 minutes away from the hotel where the event was hosted. I was walking outside my hotel, was like an Airbnb, and the area wasn't very developed. My building was very developed, but the entire area wasn't. And as I was walking to the venue, the landscape changed, it changed on me, right? So I kind of felt like I felt this change coming. It's wow, it's beautiful.
Exactly. And that drive on I-35, when you go from San Antonio to Dallas, I had to do it because of a flight change just this past weekend. 5.5 hours up I-35. And it almost feels like it's gotten to the point where there's no land left on I-35 that's not it's definitely that way between Austin and San Antonio. And if you ask me, 15 years, it's going to be the same way between Austin and Dallas.
Wow. That's amazing. Okay. So this is what we call this part of the episode. They're short, so we have to keep them short. But this is what we call the shameless plug, right? This is the place for you to say, this is me, this is Peregrine, this is what we're looking for today. If you want to hop on the wagon, this is the time. So, right? So here's your shameless plug. Let us know what you're looking for.
Absolutely. Well, I think, I'd put it into 3 categories. One is any sort of people that have an interest on really how can technology be used in real estate. And really driving the investment process, reach out to us. We know that there's a lot of firms that will talk about their tech-driven approach and maybe don't deliver on it. We pride ourselves on our ability to deliver on that. So, if it's something that interests you, talk to us. If you're interested in getting exposure to Texas Triangle and really learning more about that market, especially a lot of investors who are abroad have great interest in this region. Don't necessarily have as great of an opportunity to really learn more about it. So second, if you're interested in learning more about the Texas Triangle, reach out to us. And then third, we think we fill a pretty unique space that's actually driving a true impact on the housing shortage. And so if any of those 3 things interest you and the strategy itself interests you, please reach out to us. We're doing a closing on our fund in a couple weeks, but then we'll continue raising throughout the next 12 months. So there's obviously opportunities there, as well as, just as we think about going beyond Texas in the future, there's plenty of opportunities and hopefully a need for even more capital to support some of the other markets that have similar dynamics with, great secular migration trends and massive housing shortages.
That's great. Noah, Pape, thank you so much for being on this episode. I loved every second of it. And yeah, we'll see you in the next episode of the Dealmakers Coffee Break. Thank you so much, Noah. Thank you for joining us. Check out more episodes on the Dealmakers podcast, available on Spotify, Apple Music, Google Podcasts, and Agora's website at agorareal.com/podcast. See you in the next episode.